I'm Stephanie Fisher, and my concentration here at Gallatin has been in sustainable food systems. In the past 2 years, I became increasingly interested in women's involvement in the food system, specifically farm women. So today, I'd like to challenge your notions of domesticity, of women's labor, and how this relates to a sustainable food system. Post-World War II America saw the rise of the housewife, where women dominated the domestic sphere, what I define as the kitchen and the home space. Here we have Betty Draper from AMC's Mad Men, and she's a pretty accurate representation of the domestic housewife phenomenon of the 1950s and 60s, where the domestic sphere was perceived as a place of oppressive and difficult labor. Next to her, we have Betty Friedan, who, writing in the 1960s, author of the feminist manifesto, The Feminine Mystique. Friedan, writing in reaction to the Drapers of her time, implored women out of the home, thereby creating the long-standing cultural taboo on the association of women with the home and the kitchen. But beneath this mainstream feminist story lies the untold story of rural and farm women, where the domestic space was not merely a place of oppression, it was also a place of important and progressive work. So why is this important today? From 2002 to 2007, the number of female principal farm operators rose 19%, despite the relatively small 7% increase in the number of farm operators overall. Part of this rise is attributable to innovations in the way that the agricultural census collects its data. Prior to 2002, the agricultural census only collected detailed demographic information on up to one principal farm operator per farm. Today, they collect detailed demographic information on up to 2 principal farm operators and 2 secondary operators. On top of that, prior to 1978, the agricultural census did not even ask to specify the gender of farm operators, implying that all farm operators were male. But women on farms is nothing new. They've always been integral to the farm economy in both their reproductive and productive labor. The reproductive labor is defined as any work put towards the farm home, such as caring for kids or preparing meals. Their productive labor, defined as any work put towards the farm economy, such as harvesting, weeding, or minding the books, essentially traditionally male labor. But because of the ambiguous nature of the farm home as a place of both leisure and work prior to urbanization, much of women's farm labor went undocumented. So despite having this double responsibility for tending for both the farm business and the farm home, women and the larger society perceived these duties as merely supplemental to their duties as wives and mothers. Women on farms have also been the purveyors of small-scale sustainable agriculture, and the shift to the industrialized food system revoked many of the means of empowerment. A great example of this is women in chicken farming. Prior to the 1940s, rural and farm women provided the majority of egg and chicken production in the United States, and it was also the only labor for which they received actual wages, called pin money. And yet, farm women still put this money towards the farm economy rather than towards their own personal benefit. During the 1940s, riding the wave of increased mechanization in mass production and consumption, agricultural extension scientists, typically male, sought to bring chicken farming into the mass market, thereby revoking the means of production from women. This is what chicken farming has evolved to look like today. Increased standardization, large-scale production, large-scale consumption. A means of production that is arguably no longer good for the chickens, good for the animals, good for our bodies, or good for the planet. Now, I'm not arguing that the shift from small-scale to large-scale agriculture is attributable solely to the loss of women's means of production, but rather these ideas of domesticity in women's labor have steadily influenced our shift to the industrialized food system. Women on farms are continuing this tradition of sustainability. Women are more likely than men to have farms that are smaller in both sales and size, and they're also more likely to raise non-traditional livestock, such as sheep and goats, and to have a larger diversity of crops in their farm, as opposed to the now conventional single crop large-scale field. So it's important to call attention to women who are practicing this once silent sustainability as we work for change within our food system. Women on farms today are practicing a new kind of domesticity, one that no longer implies the long tradition of domination, but instead one that emphasizes self-sufficiency and a reclaiming of lost knowledge, a reclaiming of a lost history, and a reclaiming of our food system. In the words of feminist farm women scholar Joan Jensen, there is a revolution going on out in the backcountry, a quiet one. Women are coming to grips with what it means to have lived off the land and to want to continue that tradition in the face of almost insurmountable odds. Thank you.